The jarring ring of the phone jolted me awake at 2 a.m. Groggily, I fumbled for the receiver, my heart pounding with a sense of dread. Late-night calls never brought good news. "Hello?" I croaked, rubbing the sleep from my eyes. "Viv, it's me, Shane." The familiar voice of my estranged brother sent a chill down my spine. We hadn't spoken in years, not since our falling out over his reckless lifestyle choices. "What do you want, Shane? It's the middle of the night." There was a pregnant pause before he responded, his tone laced with uncharacteristic desperation. "I need you to take Ellie." "What? Take Ellie? Your daughter?" I sat upright, confusion and anger swirling within me. "Yeah, I can't take care of her anymore. I'm a mess, Viv. Please, she needs a stable home." Before I could protest, the doorbell rang, echoing through the silence of my apartment. With shaky steps, I made my way to the front door and peered through the peephole. There stood a small figure, clutching a worn backpack. Ellie, my 9-year-old niece whom I hadn't seen in years. Throwing open the door, I stared at her in disbelief. She looked up at me with those big, soulful eyes, a mixture of fear and relief etched across her delicate features. "Uncle Shane said I have to stay with you now," she whispered, her voice trembling. In that moment, my world shifted on its axis. The weight of Shane's abandonment crashed down on me, leaving me reeling. How could he do this? How could he simply discard his own child like a burden too heavy to bear? Wordlessly, I ushered Ellie inside, my mind racing with a million questions. As I guided her to the guest room, I couldn't help but notice the haunted look in her eyes. A look no child should ever possess. That night, as I lay awake staring at the ceiling, the gravity of the situation settled upon me like a suffocating weight. My brother, once the golden child of our family, had hit rock bottom. And in his descent, he had dragged his innocent daughter down with him, thrusting her into my ill-prepared arms. Little did I know, this was just the beginning of a journey that would test the depths of my resilience and reveal the true power of familial bonds, both forged and broken. The first few days with Ellie were a whirlwind of chaos and confusion. As a career-driven woman with no children of my own, I found myself completely out of my depth. Simple tasks like preparing meals or helping with homework became monumental challenges. Ellie, bless her heart, tried her best to adapt to her new surroundings, but I could see the fear and uncertainty lurking behind her brave facade. The weight of her father's abandonment hung heavy over us both. It wasn't until our first visit to Ellie's pediatrician that the true gravity of Shane's negligence came crashing down on me. "Miss Harper," the doctor began, her brow furrowed with concern, "Ellie's medical records indicate that she has been diagnosed with a neurological condition that requires regular monitoring and treatment." I felt the blood drain from my face as I turned to look at Ellie, who sat silently clutching her worn stuffed bear. How could Shane have kept something so serious from me? "But I had no idea," I stammered, my hands trembling. "Shane never mentioned anything about this." The doctor's expression hardened. "Unfortunately, the records show that Ellie has missed several crucial follow-up appointments and treatments over the past year." A wave of anger washed over me, hot and consuming. Shane's irresponsibility knew no bounds. He had not only abandoned his daughter emotionally, but had also jeopardized her health and well-being. As we left the doctor's office, Ellie reached up and took my hand, her small fingers intertwining with mine. "I'm sorry, Aunt Viv," she whispered, her eyes brimming with unshed tears. In that moment, my heart broke for this sweet, innocent child who had been so cruelly betrayed by the one person who should have protected her above all else. "You have nothing to be sorry for, sweetheart," I replied, my voice thick with emotion. "I promise, from now on, I'm going to take care of you, no matter what." Over the next few weeks, my life became a whirlwind of medical appointments, therapy sessions, and meetings with Ellie's teachers. I juggled my demanding job with my newfound parental responsibilities, running on pure adrenaline and sheer determination. Shane's sporadic phone calls and erratic messages only added to the chaos. One minute, he would be apologetic and pleading for forgiveness. The next, he would lash out with accusations and threats, his words dripping with venom. But through it all, Ellie remained my beacon of strength. Her bright smile and infectious laughter reminded me of the truly important things in life, the things Shane had so carelessly cast aside in his downward spiral. As I watched Ellie blossom under my care, a fierce protectiveness took root within me. I would not allow Shane's toxicity to poison her life any further. If he dared to try and wrest her away from the stability I had fought so hard to provide, I would fight back with every ounce of my being. Little did I know, the battle lines were already being drawn, and Shane's true colors were about to be revealed in the most explosive of ways. As the weeks passed, Ellie and I settled into a comfortable routine. Her infectious energy breathed new life into my once orderly existence, and I found myself bonding with her in ways I never thought possible. Her sharp wit and insatiable curiosity kept me on my toes, challenging me to see the world through her inquisitive eyes. Our evenings were filled with laughter and conversations that ranged from the profound to the delightfully absurd. "Aunt Viv, why do clouds look like cotton candy?" Ellie would ask, her eyes wide with wonder. "Well, you see, they're made up of tiny water droplets that scatter the sunlight," I'd explain, trying my best to simplify the scientific concepts. "But why can't we eat them?" "That's just mean," she'd pout, her brow furrowed in mock indignation. These moments of pure, unadulterated joy became the highlights of my day, a welcome reprieve from the stress of juggling work and Ellie's medical needs. Of course, Shane's presence lingered like a dark cloud, constantly threatening to rain on our newfound happiness. His phone calls grew increasingly erratic, ranging from tearful apologies to venomous tirades. "You have no right to keep my daughter from me," he'd snarl, his words slurring from what I suspected was substance abuse. "Your daughter," I'd retort, my voice laced with icy contempt. "When was the last time you acted like a father, Shane? When was the last time you put Ellie's needs before your own selfish desires?" The line would go silent, save for the sound of his ragged breathing. In those moments, I could almost hear the wheels turning in his twisted mind, plotting his next move. But Ellie remained my focus, my guiding light through the storm of Shane's chaos. I poured my energy into ensuring her medical needs were met, her education was prioritized, and her emotional well-being was nurtured. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, I began to see the weight of her past lift from her shoulders. The haunted look in her eyes faded, replaced by a spark of joy and wonder that warmed my heart. "I love you, Aunt Viv," she'd whisper as I tucked her into bed each night, her small arms wrapping around my neck in a gentle embrace. Those 4 simple words held more power than any of Shane's vicious outbursts. They were a reminder of the unbreakable bond we had forged, a bond that transcended blood and circumstance. As the months rolled by, Ellie's progress became undeniable. Her health improved, her grades soared, and her confidence blossomed. It was as if she had been a delicate flower, finally given the nurturing environment she needed to thrive. And with each milestone, my resolve to protect her from Shane's toxicity grew stronger. I would not allow his selfish desires to uproot the life we had so carefully cultivated. Little did I know, however, that Shane's desperation was about to reach a boiling point, unleashing a chain of events that would test the limits of my strength and resilience in ways I could never have imagined. It started with a barrage of missed calls and increasingly frantic voicemails. Shane's voice, laced with desperation, echoed through the tiny speaker of my phone. "Viv, I need to talk to you. It's important. Please, just hear me out. I'm in trouble. You have to give Ellie back to me. She's my daughter." At first, I ignored his pleas, too consumed with the daily routine of work and caring for Ellie, but when the messages took on a more sinister tone, I knew I couldn't sweep them under the rug any longer. "If you don't return Ellie to me, I'll have no choice but to take legal action," Shane snarled, his words dripping with venom. "You're holding her against my will, and I won't stand for it." A cold chill ran down my spine as I replayed the message. Shane's threats were no longer the empty ramblings of a desperate man. They carried a weight of intent that chilled me to the bone. I knew I had to protect Ellie at all costs, even if it meant facing Shane head-on. The next day, as I dropped Ellie off at school, Shane ambushed us in the parking lot. His unkempt appearance and bloodshot eyes were a stark reminder of how far he had fallen. "Viv, we need to talk," he slurred, his breath reeking of stale alcohol. "Not now, Shane," I replied firmly, ushering Ellie towards the school entrance. "I'm dropping Ellie off, and then I have to get to work." "No, you don't understand," he shouted, grabbing my arm with surprising force. I need money, and I need it now. If you don't give it to me, I'll take Ellie back, and you'll never see her again." Ellie whimpered, her small body trembling as she clung to my side. In that moment, my protective instincts kicked into overdrive. "Don't you dare threaten us, Shane," I spat, wrenching my arm from his grasp. "Ellie is safe and happy with me, something you clearly can't provide her. If you try to take her away, I'll fight you with everything I have." Shane's eyes narrowed, and for a fleeting moment, I saw the glimmer of the man he used to be, the protective older brother who had once sworn to keep me safe. But just as quickly as it appeared, it vanished, replaced by a cold, calculating stare. "You'll regret this, Viv," he hissed. "Mark my words." As he stormed off, I pulled Ellie close, my heart pounding in my chest. I knew then that the battle lines had been drawn, and there was no turning back. Shane's threats were no longer just idle words. They were a declaration of war, and I would have to fight with every ounce of strength I possessed to protect the precious life that had become the center of my world. In the days following Shane's explosive confrontation, I found myself constantly on edge, jumping at every sudden noise or unexpected phone call. The weight of his threats hung heavy over me, casting a dark shadow on the life Ellie and I had so carefully built. But I refused to let fear dictate my actions. If Shane wanted a fight, I would be ready, armed with the truth and unwavering determination to protect Ellie at all costs. I began digging into Shane's past, piecing together the breadcrumbs of his descent into chaos. What I uncovered chilled me to the bone. It seemed his erratic behavior and financial desperation were merely the tip of a much larger iceberg. Through a web of shady business dealings and fraudulent schemes, Shane had accumulated a staggering amount of debt, leaving a trail of broken promises and burned bridges in his wake. As I delved deeper, I unearthed a disturbing pattern. Shane had a penchant for manipulating those closest to him, exploiting their trust, and draining them of every last resource before moving on to his next victim. The realization hit me like a ton of bricks. Shane's sudden interest in regaining custody of Ellie wasn't born out of paternal love or concern for her well-being. It was a desperate ploy, a last-ditch effort to secure a source of income or leverage against me. Armed with this newfound knowledge, I wasted no time in fortifying my defenses. I hired a skilled attorney, a tenacious bulldog of a woman who promised to fight tooth and nail to ensure Ellie's safety and security. "We'll bury him in evidence," she vowed, her steely gaze matching the determination in her voice. "He won't know what hit him." With each passing day, the momentum shifted in our favor. Ellie's medical records, meticulously documented by her dedicated team of doctors and therapists, painted a damning picture of Shane's neglect and indifference towards her well-being. Statements from his former partners and business associates further solidified our case, revealing a pattern of manipulation and deceit that stretched back years. As the evidence mounted, Shane's calls and threats grew increasingly desperate, his once venomous words dissolving into pathetic pleas for mercy. "Viv, please, you have to help me," he'd sob, his voice a mere shadow of its former bravado. "I'm in over my head, and they're coming for me." But I remained steadfast, my resolve unwavering. This was the path Shane had chosen, and he would have to face the consequences of his actions, no matter how painful or dire. Finally, the day of reckoning arrived. As I strode into the courthouse, Ellie's small hand clasped tightly in mine, I felt a sense of empowerment wash over me. This was the moment I had been preparing for, the moment when justice would be served, and Shane's web of lies would unravel before his very eyes. Little did I know the true confrontation was yet to come, and it would test the depths of my strength in ways I never could have imagined. The day started like any other, a flurry of activity as I rushed to get Ellie ready for school and myself prepared for another demanding day at the office. But little did I know, the calm before the storm was about to give way to a tempest of epic proportions. As I settled into my desk, my phone buzzed with an urgent message from the building's security team. "Mr. Harper is in the lobby, causing a disturbance. Should we call the authorities?" A chill ran down my spine as I realized they were referring to Shane. Without a moment's hesitation, I instructed them to handle the situation discreetly, not wanting to draw any unnecessary attention or alarm Ellie, who was safely ensconced in her classroom. But as I stepped out of the elevator and into the main lobby, the scene that unfolded before me was straight out of a nightmare. There, in the midst of the bustling corporate hustle, stood Shane, disheveled, wild-eyed, and ranting incoherently. His clothes were rumpled, and the stench of stale alcohol clung to him like a noxious cloud. "Vivian!" he bellowed, his voice slurring as he swayed precariously on his feet. "You think you can take everything from me and get away with it?" The lobby fell silent, all eyes fixed on the spectacle unfolding before them. I could feel the weight of their scrutiny, the whispers and judgments already taking shape. "Shane, please," I pleaded, trying to maintain a veneer of composure. "This isn't the way to handle this. Let's talk about this privately." But my words seemed to fall on deaf ears as Shane's tirade escalated, his volatile emotions spilling over like a dam bursting. "You're nothing but a self-righteous bitch," he spat, his eyes burning with a hatred I had never seen before. "You think you're so much better than me, don't you? Well, guess what? You're just as messed up as the rest of us." With each venomous proclamation, I felt a piece of my carefully constructed facade crumble away, exposing the raw vulnerability that lay beneath. Shane's words cut deeper than any physical wound, reopening old scars and dredging up insecurities I thought I had long since buried. But then something shifted within me. A spark of defiance ignited, fueled by the newfound strength I had discovered in my role as Ellie's protector. "You're right, Shane," I said, my voice steady and unwavering. "I am better than you, because unlike you, I've chosen to take responsibility for my actions and put someone else's well-being before my own selfish desires." Shane recoiled as if struck, his mouth agape in stunned silence. In that moment, I knew I had struck a nerve, piercing through his bravado and exposing the fragile, broken man beneath. "That's why Ellie will never be yours again," I continued, emboldened by my own words. "She deserves a stable home, a loving environment, something you've proven time and again that you're incapable of providing." The silence that followed was deafening, punctuated only by the sound of Shane's ragged breathing. For a fleeting moment, I thought I saw a glimmer of recognition in his eyes, a fleeting acknowledgement of the truth that lay behind my words. But just as quickly as it appeared, it vanished, replaced by a mask of defiance and bitter resentment. "You'll pay for this, Viv," he snarled, his voice dripping with venom. "Mark my words." As he stormed out of the lobby, the spell was broken, and the world around me seemed to snap back into focus. But even as the whispers and stares resumed, I felt a strange sense of calm wash over me. In that moment, I knew that I had won a pivotal battle, not just against Shane, but against the demons of self-doubt and insecurity that had plagued me for so long. And as I returned to my desk, my resolve steeled and my spirit invigorated, I knew that the war was far from over. But for the first time, I felt truly prepared to face whatever challenges lay ahead, armed with the knowledge that I was fighting for something greater than myself. The love and well-being of the precious child who had become the center of my world. In the aftermath of Shane's explosive meltdown, I found myself walking on eggshells, constantly bracing for his next erratic outburst. But as the weeks ticked by without incident, a fragile sense of normalcy began to settle over our lives once more. That is, until the fateful day of our family gathering, a yearly tradition that had once been a joyous occasion, full of laughter and cherished memories. This time, however, the air was thick with tension, the shadow of Shane's misdeeds looming over us like a dark cloud. As I stepped through the doors, Ellie's small hand clasped tightly in mine. I could feel the weight of 1,000 unspoken words pressing down upon me. My parents' eyes were filled with a mixture of concern and disappointment, their once unwavering faith in their golden child now shaken to its core. But it was the sight of Shane, slouched in the corner of the room, that truly took my breath away. His disheveled appearance and hollow stare were a far cry from the vibrant, charismatic brother I had once idolized. As the afternoon wore on, the atmosphere grew increasingly stifling, the forced small talk and plastered-on smiles doing little to mask the elephant in the room. It was clear that something had to give, and I knew deep down that it would fall upon me to break the cycle of denial and deception that had plagued our family for far too long. So, with a deep breath and a steely resolve, I rose to my feet, the weight of the evidence I had gathered burning a hole in my pocket. I think it's time we address the elephant in the room, I began, my voice cutting through the uneasy silence like a knife. Shane, your actions over the past few years have been nothing short of reprehensible. A collective gasp rippled through the room, but I pressed on, undeterred. You abandoned your child, neglected her well-being, and exploited those closest to you for your own selfish gain. I continued, my words laced with a righteous fury that had been simmering beneath the surface for far too long. Shane's eyes widened, his mouth opening and closing like a fish gasping for air. But before he could muster a defense, I pulled out the stack of medical records, financial statements, and sworn affidavits, a damning collection of evidence that laid bare the true extent of his deceit. These documents paint a clear picture of the man you've become, I said, my voice steady and unwavering. A man driven by greed, selfishness, and a complete disregard for the well-being of those who should have mattered most. As I methodically laid out the facts, the room fell into a deafening silence, save for the occasional muffled sob or sharp intake of breath. Shane, for once, was rendered speechless, his usual bravado stripped away to reveal the hollow shell of a man beneath. You have two choices, Shane, I concluded, my gaze fixed upon his downcast eyes. You can continue down this path of self-destruction, alienating those who once loved you and squandering what little dignity you have left. Or you can take responsibility for your actions, seek the help you so desperately need, and perhaps one day earn back the trust you have so carelessly betrayed. The silence that followed was deafening, punctuated only by the sound of my own heartbeat thundering in my ears. And then, in a moment that will forever be seared into my memory, Shane lifted his head, his eyes brimming with unshed tears. You're right, Viv, he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. I've hit rock bottom, and I have no one to blame but myself. In that instant, a weight seemed to lift from my shoulders, as if the years of pent-up frustration and anguish had finally found release. I had laid bare the truth, exposed the demons that had threatened to tear our family apart, and emerged victorious. As I looked around the room, I saw a flicker of hope in the eyes of my loved ones. A glimmer of possibility that perhaps, just perhaps, we could begin to heal the wounds that had been inflicted upon us. And in that moment, I knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, I possessed the strength and resilience to face them head-on, fortified by the knowledge that I had fought for what truly mattered, the love and well-being of the precious child who had become the beating heart of my world. The months that followed were a whirlwind of change and growth, both for Ellie and myself. With Shane's shadow finally lifted, we were free to embrace the future with open arms, unburdened by the weight of his toxic presence. The legal proceedings were swift and decisive, with the mountain of evidence I had compiled leaving little room for doubt. Shane, faced with the stark reality of his misdeeds, had little choice but to relinquish his parental rights, clearing the path for me to officially adopt Ellie as my own. The day we stood before the judge, hand in hand, was one I will never forget. Ellie's eyes shone with a mixture of hope and trepidation, her small frame trembling ever so slightly as the weight of the moment settled upon her. But as the judge's gavel fell, sealing our fates as mother and daughter, a radiant smile spread across Ellie's face, and in that instant, I knew that we had both found the missing piece to our fractured lives. I love you, Mom, she whispered, her arms wrapping around me in a fierce embrace. Those 3 simple words held more power than 1,000 legal documents, more weight than any courtroom decree. They were a testament to the unbreakable bond we had forged, a bond that had been tempered in the fires of adversity and emerged stronger than ever before. In the weeks that followed, we settled into our new normal, each day bringing with it a sense of joy and wonder that had been sorely lacking in our lives for far too long. Ellie thrived in her new stable environment, her once haunted eyes sparkling with a newfound zest for life. Her academic performance soared, and her medical conditions, once so precariously neglected, became a mere footnote in our daily routine, meticulously managed and monitored with the utmost care and attention. And through it all, I found myself evolving in ways I never could have imagined. The once-driven career woman who had placed such value on material success and achievement now found her greatest joy in the simple pleasures of motherhood. tucking Ellie into bed at night, helping her with her homework, and reveling in the pure, unfiltered laughter that seemed to fill every corner of our home. Of course, the specter of Shane's misdeeds still lingered, a constant reminder of the darkness we had overcome. But rather than letting it consume us, we chose to embrace it as a lesson, a cautionary tale of what happens when one's moral compass becomes hopelessly skewed. News of Shane's legal troubles and financial ruin trickled in like a slow, steady drip, each revelation more damning than the last. But as I watched him face the consequences of his actions, I felt no sense of vindication or triumph, only a profound sadness for the man he had become and the opportunities he had squandered. In the end, perhaps that was the true karmic justice, not the legal penalties or financial ruin, but the realization that Shane had lost something far more precious than material wealth, the love and trust of those who had once been his biggest supporters. As for Ellie and me, our journey was just beginning. With each passing day, our bond grew deeper, our love more resolute, and our appreciation for the gift we had been given more profound. And as I watched Ellie blossom into a confident, compassionate young woman, I couldn't help but feel a sense of pride and gratitude for the unexpected path that had led us to this moment. For it was in the midst of chaos and adversity that I had discovered my true calling, and in the process, found the courage to embrace a love more powerful than any force on earth.